I hope you noticed how the Norwegian national team celebrated at the recent FIFA World Cup. You know where this expression of joy comes from. If you watched the FIFA World Cup or almost any major international sporting event over the last decade, you've felt this chill. A stadium of tens of thousands of people, moving as one, executing a thunderous, rhythmic clap that sounds less like a sports chant and more like a declaration of war. It is known globally as the Viking clap, popularized on the world stage by Iceland and echoed fiercely by fans across Norway and Scandinavia. It feels ancient. It feels terrifying. It feels completely Viking. But here is the bizarre truth that almost nobody in that stadium realizes. The origin of this chant hides a massive historical secret. A secret that directly mirrors how these mysterious people lived, conquered, and vanished. Why do modern crowds channel the spirit of the Northmen this way? And what did the original Vikings actually do when they wanted to strike fear into the hearts of mortals? Hold that thought, because to understand the thunder in the stadium today, we have to travel back over 1,200 years into a world of blood, ice, and ash. The answer waiting for you at the end of this journey changes everything you think you know about the Nordic world. Let's break it down chapter by chapter for ease of explanation. Chapter 1. The Rise. How were the Vikings found? To the rest of medieval Europe, the Vikings seemed to appear out of nowhere. One day the oceans were empty. The next, demonic ships with dragon heads were emerging from the morning fog, burning everything in their sight. But the Vikings didn't just spawn out of thin air. They were forged by their environment. In the 8th century, Scandinavia was a brutal place to survive. The soil was rocky, the winters were endless, and the land was fiercely divided among local chieftains. Viking wasn't even an ethnic label. In Old Norse, the word Vikinger was a job description. It literally meant a raider or a pirate. To go a Viking meant to board a ship and seek wealth across the sea. But what forced them off the land and onto the water? History points to a perfect storm of three things: population growth, intense local tribal warfare, and a custom where only the eldest son inherited the family farm. If you were a younger brother in 8th century Norway, you had two choices: starve in the frozen mountains or take to the sea and carve out your own destiny. And they possessed a secret weapon that made the sea theirs: the longship. This was the pinnacle of Dark Age engineering. These vessels were incredibly light and flexible, meaning they could ride the massive, treacherous waves of the Atlantic Ocean. But more importantly, they had an incredibly shallow draft. A Viking longship could sail in water just 3 feet deep. This meant they didn't need docks or harbors. They could cross an entire ocean, sail straight up a shallow river into the heart of Europe, beach themselves on a riverbank, raid a town, and vanish before the local king could even assemble his army. They were the stealth bombers of the medieval world, and Europe never saw them coming. Chapter 2. The World's Fear. The terror of the Northmen for centuries. A desperate prayer echoed through the churches of England, France, and Spain. A furore, Normanorum, liber nos, Domine. From the fury of the Northmen, deliver us, O Lord. To the Christian world, the Vikings weren't just enemies. They were the apocalypse on 2 legs. The terror officially began on a peaceful summer morning on the holy island of Lindisfarne. Lindisfarne was a wealthy, undefended monastery, home to monks who spent their lives copying holy texts and accumulating gold ornaments given to the church. To the local monks, the sea was a barrier that protected them. To the Norsemen, the sea was a highway. The raiders showed no mercy. They slaughtered the monks, dragged others into slavery, desecrated the altars, and loaded their longships with silver and gold. This sent shockwaves through Europe. In the medieval mind, houses of God were sacred, protected by divine power. The fact that these pagans could walk in, butcher the priests, steal the gold, and sail away unpunished suggested to Europe that God had abandoned them, or that the devil himself had been unleashed. But the Vikings weren't just mindless beasts. They were master psychological warriors. They actively used terror as a weapon. They realized that if they cultivated a reputation for absolute, unhinged brutality, towns would surrender and pay them massive fortunes, known as Danegeld, just to make them go away without a fight. They weaponized fear, and for 200 years, it worked flawlessly. Chapter 3. The greatest history and famous moments. While the world remembers them as simple raiders, the true history of the Vikings is a sprawling epic of exploration, massive sieges, and empires that stretched across the globe. Let's look at their most famous, unbelievable moments. In the spring of 845, a legendary Viking leader named Ragnar Lodbrok led a fleet of 120 ships carrying over 5,000 warriors straight into the heart of France. They sailed up the Seine River and laid siege to Paris. The French king, Charles the Bald, watched in horror as his army was dismantled. To save his kingdom from being burned to the ground, he paid Ragnar a mind-blowing 7,000 pounds of silver and gold. It was one of the largest ransoms in ancient history, proving that the Vikings could bring the greatest empires of Europe to their knees. 20 years later, the Vikings stopped just raiding England. They decided to conquer it. A massive coalition of Norse warriors, known to history as the Great Heathen Army, landed on English shores. Led by the sons of Ragnar, including the brilliant tactician Ivar the Boneless, they overthrew kingdom after kingdom, permanently settling the land and establishing a Norse territory known as the Danelaw. But perhaps their most staggering achievement wasn't a battle, but a voyage. Around the year 1000 AD, a Norse explorer named Leif Erikson did the impossible. 500 years before Christopher Columbus ever set sail, Leif Erikson and his crew stepped ashore in North America, establishing a settlement they called Vinland in modern-day Newfoundland. They built houses, harvested lumber, and traded with the indigenous population. The Vikings had officially conquered the Atlantic Ocean. Chapter 4. The conclusion and the World Cup revelation, which brings us back to the mysterious stadium chant, the thunderous, spine-chilling Viking clap that fans use today to celebrate their heritage and terrify their opponents. At the beginning of this video, we asked, what is the secret behind this chant, and what did the original Vikings actually do? Here is the twist that shocks most people. The Viking clap is not ancient. It is not Norse. The original Vikings never did it. In reality, the chant was created by sports fans in Scotland, specifically supporters of the club Motherwell FC. During a European match, fans from Iceland's completely non-Viking related team, Stjarnan, saw the Scottish fans doing the chant, loved the energy, and brought it back home to Iceland. When Iceland shocked the world in the 2016 Euros and the 2018 World Cup, the global media branded it the Viking clap, and the name stuck. But in a way, this modern myth perfectly captures the true legacy of the Vikings. The original Norsemen didn't leave behind a massive unified empire. Their age ended in 1066 at the Battle of Stamford Bridge, when the last great Viking king fell, and Scandinavia fully adopted Christianity, melting into the rest of civilized Europe. But what they did leave behind was an indelible mark on human culture. They left an image of unstoppable willpower, boundary-breaking exploration, and an untamed spirit that could look into the face of a terrifying, unknown ocean and sail right through it. So when 30,000 people clap in unison in a stadium today, they aren't copying a historical fact. They are channeling a historical feeling. The feeling that no matter how harsh the winter or how dangerous the stormy seas ahead of you might be, you can build a ship, face the storm, and conquer it.